Time for another board game review, and this time we have the big old Fireteam Zero. This was sent to me by Emergent Games, and it is designed by Mike Langlois, I don't know, Christian Leonhard, and Loic Musi. It is a squad tactics and horror board game, and as you can see, the box is humongous. Look how big this big old game is. In 1942, 4 soldiers vanished from the training program of the newly formed 1st Ranger Battalion, their names stricken from the roster. Chosen for their unique skills, they would fight in secret against terrifying supernatural enemies and overwhelming odds. This is their story. Alright, I'm not going to explain every single detail of the game because it's kind of a big-ass game, but I'll give you kind of like a rundown of how it works. So when you start your game out, you pick your mission from the mission briefings book. There are a bunch of missions in here. They have little story segments. There's a lot of writing in the game, so I appreciate that about it. It does have a lot of detail to it. There are a lot of board pieces. Each one is double-sided, depending on the scenario. So this is a setup for the first mission, and here you can see it tells you which monsters you will need, which decks you will need, and all that sort of stuff. So every mission has different sort of setup things, and it kind of tells you how to set it up. You have all different types of characters. For example, you got Maxine Moxie Hall. She's a leader role. She has a submachine gun, and she has tactical abilities. I played as Shadow Rat Decatur. He's a close combat expert. He has knives and has his own abilities. Each character has their own set of action cards. They can be played as an attack, as you can see here on the top half, or as a reaction on the bottom half. Now to set up your board, you have spawn tokens. I'm not going to put all of them on the board because I don't feel like it, but they're basically like this, and on every spot that has a red mark, you put these on. And as you can see, they have different numbers on them. This exit token signifies where our final exit is for the mission. There are monster cards for each type of monsters. There are tons of miniatures in the game, and these all correspond with different types of monsters you can fight. There are also objective cards and also recon cards, which I'll explain later. The lucky coin represents your health. Basically, if you get knocked out once, it gets flipped, and if you get knocked out again, you lose. There's also a twist track, where as the game progresses, you can uncover twists that change the rules of the game. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm just gonna get down to the basics of how to play, because I don't really need to sit down and explain every single thing. Each turn you draw cards, usually up to 5, but there are special circumstances where you cannot, which I'll probably get into in a second. But these 5 cards are cards you can play in your turn, but they also represent your health in the game. You're a party of people trying to complete the objectives for the specific level or mission that you have, and you're trying to get out there without anyone dying and get to that exit by the end, and if you can, ta-da, you win. There are 3 phases: the tactics phase, the hero phase, and the threat phase. In the tactics phase, one of you, and only one, can choose to play tactical response. And what tactical responses are basically very powerful abilities that can really help you a lot. Like this one is Moment of Clarity. All other heroes may immediately perform an action, starting with the player to your left. They're usually very useful, but if you play a tactical response card, you cannot draw up to your hand of 5 that turn. This means that even though you get to use a cool ability, it makes you more, let's say, open to death, because if you run out of cards in your hand, you are knocked out. Then, like I said, everyone else who didn't play a tactical response card gets to draw up to 5. And then you go into your hero phase. You move to adjacent locations. Usually your hero has a speed of 2, meaning you can move up to 2 spaces. However, if a space is marked as difficult terrain with this orange marker here, then that means it takes 2 moves to enter instead of just 1. So, as you can see, there are a lot of them on this board, so it is actually pretty slow movement. So here's our little team. And then you also have specialists, and specialists are basically like NPCs, kind of. They're helpful, but you don't control them. Well, you do control them. You can bring them with you, but they don't represent a player. They're just separate members of the party. So there are 2 standard actions you can do. There's attacking and searching. Here's how attacking works. Here's a little corrupted animal. Oh, it's a little creepy bugger, right? Let's say he's I don't know, right here. All right. So to attack him, you look at your cards and go, okay, these are the cards I've got, and each card has a range and an attack value and an attack type. All cards you play must be the same attack range and attack type. So let's say I played these 2 cards to attack this guy. it would add up to 4 bullets with a range of 1. 4 represents how many attack dice you roll, and here are the attack dice. As you can see, they have bullets and fists and grenades and all that good stuff on there. So you roll the dice, roll a total of 3 bullets, so ignore the other symbols, and that's 3 bullet damage towards that monster. Then you look at the monster card and go, okay, this monster has a health of 2, and it has a bullet resistance of 1, so it's enough to kill it. 3 bullets. 1 gets subtracted from it, but it's still 2 damage and the monster is killed. You have to kill it in 1 shot or else it does not get killed. And so if you kill it, you remove it from the board and you return it to the spawn pool. The specialist NPCs that I talked to you about have their own abilities that come into play. Like for example, if this guy Henry is in your location or an adjacent location when you perform an attack, you may re-roll one of your attack dice after rolling, which is very crucial. It's very important to bring these specialists with you. First of all, you can't abandon them. But secondly, they are useful to your party, so you should bring them with you wherever you go. Now, the other action in the game is searching, and so if you go into an area where there are no monsters and you look under here, you can search this. Whenever you search a spawn area, you look inside your recon deck and pull out a card. This is crucial because in the mission, they give you objectives like repair the ferry or acquire specimen samples. And the only way to do that is to search these areas and find specific cards that you need. But of course, mixed inside these recon cards are some events that can really screw you up. After all your characters have moved and done their actions, whether that be attacking or searching, then you go into the threat phase. Like I mentioned before, this threat track progresses, and as the game goes on, whenever you go onto one of these symbols, you uncover a twist. So a twist can be something like infested. All monsters inflict a minimum of 2 damage when they attack. This damage may still be reduced or negated. These are basically new rules to the game that make the game a lot harder. So it's to your benefit to beat the game as quickly as you can. And then the monsters activate. But before I show you how the monsters activate, I'll show you how the monsters spawn in the first place. So you know I said that there were these spawn tokens, right? What you do is you roll this dice for how many monsters you need to put on, and each time you roll, so let's say I roll a 3, then I would put a monster on the corresponding 3 spawn token. There are 12 spawn tokens all over the board, so again, it kind of gives you an interesting way to randomize where the enemies come out. And then the monsters activate. So the monsters are all over the board. They're not here, but let's pretend they are for the sake of this explanation. Here's one right here. And each monster has their own movement. This one is 2. It also shows you how much the monster will attack. This one will attack with a 2 dice for bullet damage and has a range of 0. You roll the dice for each monster, and so if you roll this one, they get to move 1 extra location, and if you roll this, then they have a special ability. In this case, it would be attack range is increased by 1. Monsters automatically move straight towards the closest hero, in this case, 1, 2. Monsters are not affected by terrain, so unfortunately for you, even though you have to slog through these trees, monsters can just go whoop, and they're there. And then you roll the dice. So this monster had 2 attack dice and had bullet damage, so let's roll. That's 2 bullets, so that means the monster does 2 damage to whoever it's attacking. For each point of damage a monster does to you, you have to discard a card, and that's where the health system comes into play. You can take one for the team if you're in the same area as somebody else, but you have to decide that before the monster attacks. If you're ever required to discard a greater number of cards than you currently have, your hand is discarded, you are knocked down. The figure is knocked to its side, and you flip that lucky coin, like so. If this ever happens again, game over. So that's basically the flow of the game. There are other things I didn't explain fully, but I don't want to get into. This isn't a complete tutorial for the game. But basically, you're moving around through these areas. You're trying to kill monsters and get to these points so you can search them so that you can find the appropriate event cards that will help you fulfill your objectives. Once you get your objectives fulfilled, get your way to the exit point without dying, and if you do, you win. However, at the end of every threat phase, the monsters respawn. So even though you've killed like 4 guys, they all come back. And there are also harder monsters like elites and bosses, which are much tougher to kill. So you're constantly feeling like you are being overwhelmed because, yeah, you killed a bunch of monsters this turn, but they're going to be back. Now, like I said before, you can use these cards to attack, but you can also use them to react. So this one says, for example, play before an ally performs a brawl attack to increase their attack strength by 2. So you can support your allies by going, okay, you're going to attack this monster, I'm going to play this, give you 2 more dice. And that's the game. It's not a perfect explanation, but I think you get the idea of how it's played. Alright, so let's talk my thoughts on the game. First of all, I think the art is really good. I think, especially, like, I like the aesthetic a lot, the whole 1940s theme. You can see on, like, the character cards, it's like a cool looking art style. The miniatures are really cool. The humans are kind of they're just kind of like little dinky things. But then you get into there's a lot of different types of monsters, and they are very detailed and very cool looking. So obviously in terms of miniatures and art, they did not skimp out. I like the card play. I like that there's kind of a variety to how they can be used. They can be used as just simple attacks against enemies, but they can also be used as reactions to, you know, block attacks or support or beef up attacks. The tactical responses in particular feel very powerful. I like, that was probably well, unfortunately, maybe the only thing that I've really felt differentiated the characters, which I'll get into that in a second. But it's fun to like discuss as a team. Should I use a tactical response card now? Because they're really good, but then I can't heal. So you're gonna have to protect me or something if I use this. For example, one ability let my guy basically just move spaces and wipe out all monsters in every space. It was called Search and Destroy or something like that. It was cool, and I think the idea of having the cards be HP is it's a fun idea. I think it's clever. The game is fairly tough. The first time we played, we were decimated. We had to start over, and you kind of have to stick together, maybe to a faulty extent, which I will also get into. The dice feel slightly unbalanced. As you can see, all the sides are different. So this one has 2 bullets, 1 fist. This one has 2 grenades, 1 fist. This one has 1 of each. So sometimes you have an attack and it's like 6 bullets, and then you roll and you're like, I got 2 bullets on my dice. Okay, like I understand it's luck based, that's fine. But the way these, like, we ended up rolling this bitch side a whole bunch. It's the 3 grenade side, which we didn't really use grenades that much. The probability feels unwieldy. Like if I'm throwing 8 dice, which is the max you can do in the game, no matter what. If I'm throwing 8 dice at an elite enemy, I feel like I should be like, this is a pretty good attack. But we would end up just rolling garbage, and it would be blocked like nothing. That's an 8 dice is a lot in this game. And then going into what I was saying earlier, the characters never really feel amazingly distinct from each other. In other co-op games, I feel like, oh, I am this guy, I am the medic, I am the blank. They give you these really cool, specific sort of powers that make you feel like I am this guy of the team. But in this game, it just kind of came down to, hey, do you have bullet cards in your hand? Do you have fist cards in your hand? Okay, use those. Okay, you didn't do it. I mean, you failed the attack. Like, they never really felt that distinct. I think the main way they feel distinct is the tactical responses. With that said, working together is satisfying. I mean, you basically, with the reaction cards, you can support each other, defend each other. It's a hard game, so you really have to work together. And so, kind of, even though they kind of felt like muddy, samey characters, it was still satisfying in that regard. And the specialists are fun, like I mentioned before, Henry lets you re-roll an attack dice, and then the other character, which I didn't talk about, Patty, he lets you search as a free action, which is really cool because searching is a very essential part of the game. Now, monsters are not affected by terrain, and this actually annoyed me. I know the game is difficult, but it kind of has the sort of unintentional effect of making you feel like you're slogging through molasses, because a lot of the spaces have that difficult terrain color, so your guy can move like 1 space and that's it for the turn. So it's just like a slog. You're just like, meanwhile the monster is like, haha, I can move 3 spaces this time, boop boop boop, here I am. Like, I get that it was supposed to make it feel like the old claustrophobic, like the monsters are swarming in, but it really just makes your guys feel super slow, and it's kind of a drag. That, and with the dice rolling, it felt like the monsters just had a huge advantage to kind of an annoying extent. And because your characters move so slowly, you basically have to stick together. There's really no reason to split apart, because if you split apart too far from each other, it takes forever to reunite if one of you gets knocked out or something, because the character just moves so slowly. So you're kind of just like, alright, just We're all in this space. So I'll move together. Womp. 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 Feels like you're on the world's slowest roller coaster. Now, with all that said, setup does not take that long. Even though there's a lot of parts and cards and miniatures, it's fairly simple to set up with the sort of instructions they give you. It plays very simply and smoothly. I do like that it's very simple to just, alright, I'm going to attack, put down these cards, roll the dice, did it calculate? No? Okay, move on. But I just feel like there wasn't anything that, like, wowed me. Like, there's some unwieldiness in the game, and I'm okay with some unwieldiness or some, what I feel like maybe slightly unbalanced mechanics if the game can, like, wow me. But this game never really did that. I feel like the only times it did were, like, there were some turns of some really, like, intense survival, and we kind of scraped through. That was fun. And the tactical responses, like I mentioned, some of those abilities were very satisfying. But other than that, it just kind of felt like a move slow and roll dice, and then nothing happened. Okay, just move on kind of ordeal. So overall, it's serviceable. I do like the effort that was put into the art and the miniatures, and I think the overall mood is cool, and I think the details and the writing and the cards and the missions are interesting. But gameplay-wise, nothing, like, blew me away. So, yeah, that's how I feel. But overall, it's alright.